Good evening and welcome to Inside City Hall for Friday, December 5th, 2025. I'm Bobby Kuza. Homeless encampments will no longer be targeted by City Hall when Zohran Mamdani becomes mayor next month, sparking a policy debate today with the current mayor. Our Dan Rivoli joins me now with more on tonight's top story. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Bobby. So for a long time, progressive critics of this policy basically argued that it is not a success because the homeless men and women are not accepting shelter. But Mayor Adams defended the policy in a video saying that it is humane to take away their tents to prevent them from living on the streets. And he said that Mamdani's plan to do away with this policy would result in a quality of life nightmare.
Leaving people to suffer in the cold isn't just neglectful, it's a disgrace.
Mayor Eric Adams cut this video suggesting that Mayor-elect Mamdani would be abandoning homeless people if he did away with a policy that city workers dismantle tents and encampments. Mamdani said this week the so-called homeless sweeps will end in his administration.
We are going to take an approach that understands its mission is connecting those New Yorkers to housing, whether it's supportive housing, whether it's rental housing, whatever kind of housing it is.
Since Adams took office, city workers visited 18,653 locations with encampments. There were only 115 instances of someone accepting shelter.
They're simply moving people from place to place, taking their stuff.
City Comptroller Brad Lander, a critic of the sweeps, said Mamdani is right to end them, even if that means encampments remain unless there are violations.
When you use a sweeps approach, you break the trust down. You know, we're often talking about folks who need some trust built, some relationships developed before they're ready to come inside.
How involved were you when it came to helping city workers dismantle these encampments?
I played a major role.
John Schell is a retired NYPD chief.
90% of the time, if not higher, the homeless didn't want the shelter system.
But refusing to stay in a crowded, dirty, and dangerous shelter was no excuse to stay in a tent.
If they didn't want the help, they couldn't set up an encampment next to a bank or someone's business, or they had to move.
New York has contended with encampments before.
There were homeless encampments in public and in Grand Central Station and in subway tunnels in the late 80s.
Peter Moskos, a professor at John Jay College and author of the book Back from the Brink, Inside the NYPD and New York City's Extraordinary 1990s Crime Drop.
We solved the problem of tent cities in New York City by saying you can't do that.
But the shelter system needs to improve.
People should take advantage of it, and we should make sure that we make those shelter systems safe and not corrupt.
And be a better alternative than the street. City officials currently have identified 180 locations where there are encampments and an operation pending. Bobby.
Interesting. So, Dan, I mean, I guess the big question, and I don't know if anybody knows the answer to this, is when they dismantle these encampments, if people aren't accepting shelter and they're not getting put in housing, where are they going? Are they just relocating to some other part of the city where maybe they're not congregating with other homeless people? I mean, is there any data to show what's happening?
It is, if you talk to homeless people, you talk to the advocates and progressive lawmakers, they will say, yes, that is exactly what is happening. They are moving to another place. But to the Adams administration and defenders of this policy is, fine, they can move to another place, but they will not be allowed to set up a tent. It is bad for them to stay in a place on the street. It is also bad for New Yorkers if they are seeing tent cities in their local parks, and that if they prohibit the congregation, encampments in public places, it eventually will hopefully, the goal is that they will end up going to a shelter. As bad as it may be, they will not be allowed to stay on the streets. That is the idea from the Adams administration.
Great. All right, Dan Rivoli, thank you so much for that report. Oh, all right. Actually, Dan, let me put one more question to you before we move on. We're waiting for Bernadette Hogan to pop up at the location where Zohran Mamdani is appearing tonight. I mean, the video today from Mayor Adams, how unusual is that for a mayor to, create this, criticizing the policy of his successor? Because this wasn't like the mayor getting a question at some event. He was actually went out and created this in order to, I mean, really to to rebuke Mamdani's policy.
And he thinks this isn't an important policy in which to rebuke him over. Now, the mayor has said when he's out of office, he's not going to be looking back and criticizing, but he will and has been criticizing Mamdani on a number of issues in his final days, and he sees it as his role as mayor. And on an issue like this, he thinks this is important, not just for the homeless men and women living on the street. He says if you let them have tents, if you let them build encampments, they will stay there, they will burrow down, and they will be more likely to refuse a shelter placement. So he really does see this as a quality of life issue. And defenders of the policy, like Adams, like John Shells, we discussed that this is different than other cities. We've seen tent cities in other locations. That just simply has not happened in New York for quite some time, and there is a reason for that, and they say that it works. Their measure of success is that you are not walking down the street and seeing tent after tent. You're not in the park where you're seeing a lot of tents, where in other cities, that is what you see.
All right, I think we're going to move on now. The mayor-elect is attending a Christmas tree lighting event in the Bronx tonight, and he just took some questions from reporters on a variety of topics. Our State House reporter Bernadette Hogan is standing by. She was just with Mamdani while he took some questions. Bernadette, do you hear me? Are you there with us?
Hey there, Bobby. I can hear you. Yeah, Mamdani was taking part in a Christmas tree lighting ceremony, and then actually now I'm in Brooklyn Borough Hall. So, I mean, I don't have a Christmas tree behind me. I wish I did. But Mamdani took questions from reporters, and top of mind, of course, was Chiose, the councilman who Mamdani has been aligned with throughout the course of his campaign. Chiose also became a member of the Democratic Socialists of America and was hoping for a Mamdani endorsement in his would-be challenge to Hakeem Jeffries, the U.S. House Minority Speaker, but Chiose released an email to his supporters earlier saying that he's pulling the plug on that exploratory run. Mamdani commented on this because Mamdani actually attended a Democratic Socialists of America meeting trying to get those supporters not to back Chiose in that potential primary bid. Let's take a listen to what Mamdani had to say earlier this evening.
So on the first, I look forward to working with the City Council and Councilmember Osei to deliver on our affordability agenda. On the second, my focus during this transition is on delivering this agenda, on fulfilling this agenda, and on spending the time in building out our team. And I'm proud of the announcements that we've made. We will be making more announcements before I take office on January 1st. We'll be sure to share them.
So the question there from Mamdani is, you know, as he's focusing on building up his transition and preparing City Hall for when he's inaugurated on January 1st, why is he getting involved in these political campaigns and primaries that don't really have to do with him? Of course, there's been reporting that he is also eyeing fellow Assemblywoman and DSA member Claire Valdez to succeed Nydia Velázquez, the outgoing Brooklyn Congresswoman, longtime Congresswoman, and possibly an endorsement could be coming there. So some political jockeying going on. But now I also want to turn to Mamdani responding to Governor Kathy Hochul just yesterday, talking about how she does have some financial pains that she has to contend with, both on the state and the federal level. Some of that could jeopardize Mamdani's affordability agenda. But Mamdani has been repeating that although the governor has not been on board with raising income taxes, there could be other ways of finding revenue. Let's take a listen.
And I continue to believe that the two most straightforward ways of funding that agenda are through the increase of personal income taxes for the top 1% of New Yorkers, those who earn $1 million or more a year, by 2%, as well as the raising of the state's top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey. Those two things together would raise $9 billion. I've also said, however, that if the governor, the legislature, if Albany were to find an alternate source of funding for these programs, that is something that I would accept and I would embrace, because the most important thing is not how you fund something, it's that you fund something.
Now, another area of disagreement between Hochul and Mamdani is whether or not he even has the authority to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who earlier this week said he actually would travel to the Big Apple despite threats from Mamdani that he would uphold a request from an international tribunal to arrest Netanyahu on alleged war crimes. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
this is a city where New Yorkers want to see consistency. They want to see a belief in the law, and that's the law of our city, the law of our state, the law of our country, and also international law. And I've said that I believe that upholding that commitment is also the upholding of international criminal court warrants. That applies not only to Benjamin Netanyahu, but also to Vladimir Putin and a number of other individuals that have been charged with those kinds of crimes. And I've said that I will look to exhaust every legal possibility in upholding that law. We will not be creating our own laws in order to do so, but exhausting the ones that we have.
So that answer right there from Mamdani is where, you know, a promise meets the road, right? Rubber meets the road here with practical application. Bobby?
And Bernadette, I saw that Mamdani was, I mean, he took a lot of questions. He was also asked about his relationship with Trump and about his transition, because we've got a few weeks left till January 1st, but we've only seen a couple of appointments from Zohran Mamdani. Any indication of what's to come?
You know, the Mamdani team, they've been vetting some of those higher level appointments, right? So it still remains to be seen whether or not he'll keep some of Mayor Adams's commissioners, deputy commissioners, also just those city hall workers that are built into the system. There's 300,000, roughly 300,000 city workers. And although Mamdani has already announced that around 200 of them won't have a job come January 1st, I mean, the team is looking at people that will be able to fulfill his agenda, try to get those promises that he was able to win successfully on board, up and going. But a lot of pragmatic and logistical issues here. I mean, background checks. Is there a civil service exam coming up? All of those obnoxious, perhaps, logistical issues that other mayors and those in City Hall right now say are problems with the current hiring system. So Team Mamdani will be looking at that, and he said that he's looking forward to January 1st.
And on January 1st, I know he's been asked this a few times, but I mean, he has a lot on his agenda, and the question is, what does he tackle first? Has he talked about that and what his priority on day one is?
He says affordability. I mean, just trying to put forth a glide path of how to achieve that. I mean, look, you can't snap your fingers and just say everything is affordable now in the city. I wish you could, but he's going to have to work with Governor Kathy Hochul and with the White House, frankly, to, number one, maintain a good relationship, at least with the White House, especially when it comes to the threat of federal troops, which right now it's at a lull. But, you know, when I asked Mamdani what his last conversation was like with the president, especially regarding federal immigration enforcement within the 5 boroughs, Mamdani said it'll be a top priority for him to keep the NYPD separate from federal immigration, but it's still going to be a work in progress. Governor Kathy Hochul has already created a group, a watchdog group rather, to keep an eye on what the feds are doing and then also assist this new mayoral administration.
All right, Bernadette Hogan, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for that report. It's time now for a break. Coming up, a Virginia grand jury has reportedly declined to indict Attorney General Letitia James after a judge dismissed the initial case brought against her by federal prosecutors. We will explain the future of the case next. Then we'll be joined by Assemblymember Alex Borez to talk about his bid for Jerry Nadler's seat in Congress. Stay with us. We are back in a minute.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Spectrum TV, isn't that only live TV?
No, it's only all my favorite streaming apps with live TV.
Okay.
It's only all included at no extra cost. And that's the magic of math. Will this be on the test? Sure. Why not?
It's only one simple payment for all our TV. We gotta simplify and win. Winning is equally important.
If not, more so.
Yeah!
Only Spectrum TV, fixed TV.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You've done with the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. While a federal grand jury declined to re-indict State Attorney General Letitia James on federal mortgage fraud charges, this may not be the end of the Justice Department's pursuit of her. Our Ayanna Harry joins me now with the latest on that story. Good evening, Ayanna.
Good evening, Bobby. The legal drama here has been intense, with the Justice Department seeming determined to prosecute State Attorney General Letitia James. And tonight, this fight could be far from over. It's been 6 weeks since New York Attorney General Letitia James stood in a Norfolk, Virginia courtroom and pleaded not guilty to mortgage fraud charges. While James has had several legal wins since then,
from a legal perspective, she is not fully in the clear.
Federal prosecutors claim James lied on mortgage documents while purchasing a home for her niece in Virginia. In October, James was indicted, but in November, a judge dismissed that indictment, saying it was secured by a prosecutor who was unlawfully appointed. The investigation did not end there.
The court didn't say you couldn't bring the case, re-bring the case, or appeal the case.
According to Associated Press sources, federal prosecutors tried to bring the case again Thursday, but after hearing evidence, a Virginia grand jury declined to indict James. Reacting to the news, James said, quote, "It is time for this unchecked weaponization of our justice system to stop." But prosecutors do have options to keep going.
Prosecutors can go back to the grand jury. Generally, the way that would work is they would speak to higher ups, for lack of a better term, get permission, and theoretically they'd be presenting new evidence or other evidence that may help establish this proof.
And prosecutors can appeal the decision from a federal judge which dismissed the James indictment and found the appointment of Lindsay Halligan unlawful. As of Friday afternoon, Halligan was still listed on official press releases as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. The White House press secretary defended Halligan last week.
It is our position that Lindsay Halligan is extremely qualified for this position, but more importantly, was legally appointed to it.
And the Associated Press is reporting that federal prosecutors are expected to continue trying to secure an indictment against Letitia James, Bobby.
I guess one question is, who are these federal prosecutors who are going to pursue the case? Because wasn't one of the issues that Halligan was appointed almost exclusively in order to bring some of these cases against Trump's perceived enemies, and that there are other federal prosecutors who didn't even want to touch this?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing right now, Bobby, is a very interesting question, because Lindsay Halligan, her name is still on the website as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. I received press releases from the office as of a few hours ago. Her name was still listed. And the New York Times is reporting that this federal office is still going to court and listing her name in court documents, even after a judge last week called her appointment unlawful. So it is unclear how the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia plans to move forward. A judge said Lindsay Halligan can no longer be your top prosecutor, but she's still continuing to do the work, it appears.
So, I mean, we've reported on the case, and it's not a terribly complex case, right? It's deals with a pretty isolated issue pertaining to her mortgage application. So, I mean, what more can they bring to a grand jury. I mean, it seems like they're pretty limited in other ways to kind of approach this.
Yes, but you have to keep in mind there is incredible political pressure to continue moving this case forward. We heard from President Donald Trump in our story. He believes that there is significant evidence here and that State Attorney General Letitia James is guilty of mortgage fraud, and he's posted this publicly. He's called out Attorney General Pam Bondi, calling on her to go after this case. So, yes, in looking over the very short initial indictment that they were able to secure, I've read it, other legal authorities have read it. There isn't necessarily an extremely strong case here, but there is a strong political will to continue pursuing it.
All right, Ayanna Harry, thank you so much for that report. It's time now for a break. Coming up, the suspect who planted pipe bombs outside Republican and Democratic Party headquarters on the eve of the U.S. Capitol riot reportedly confessed to investigators. We will bring you the details straight ahead. Stay with us.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters on your smart TV and connected devices, streaming live 24/7, plus on-demand weather forecast to help you stay prepared. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News, free with your Spectrum subscription, exclusively for Spectrum customers, now available on your favorite devices.
It's only a hike. It's only made possible by Spectrum Business connecting healthcare providers of all sizes. Like hospitals relying on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network with industry-leading reliability. Practices keeping patient data safe with advanced security. Pharmacies accessing records in the cloud without fail. It's tailored connectivity solutions built for life-changing moments. It's only a hike. It's only everything. Spectrum Business.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard. At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York 1 to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood. Because our city never stops moving.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first,
stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. We are learning more about the Virginia man accused of placing pipe bombs by the Democratic and Republican Party headquarters on the night before the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. Brian Cole Jr. allegedly told investigators he believed false claims that the 2020 election was stolen. Our national reporter, Evan Kozlov, has more from the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., where Cole has been arraigned.
The hearing Friday at this D.C. courthouse was short. Brian Cole Jr. was read his charges by the judge and then directed to return for another hearing later this month. He was joined by members of his family, including one person who yelled, "I love you," as he left the courtroom. The search began nearly 5 years ago. Investigators looking for this man, seen in grainy surveillance video, placing pipe bombs near the Democratic and Republican Party headquarters in Washington, D.C. on the night of January 5th. Since then, investigators reviewed roughly 39,000 video files and interviewed more than 1,000 people. Now, prosecutors say Brian Cole Jr., a 30-year-old from Virginia, is the man responsible. They've not yet released a motive, but the Associated Press is reporting that he spoke with investigators for hours on Thursday, confessing to the act and indicating that he believed the false claims that the 2020 election was stolen from President Donald Trump, as the president has relentlessly insisted. The pipe bombs were planted the night before the January 6th riot, when supporters of President Trump tried to block the certification of Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election. Investigators say the bombs could have been lethal if they had exploded, although the devices fortunately did not go off.
We were going to track this person to the end of the earth.
Investigators say no new tip or information led to Cole's arrest. Rather, it was a reevaluation of the massive amount of evidence already collected.
Old evidence, new people, great police work. That's all it is. Good old-fashioned police work.
And the FBI affidavit outlines how investigators zeroed in on Cole, saying that his credit cards were allegedly used to purchase components used to create that pipe bomb. Also saying that cell phone records placed him in the area where those pipe bombs were placed on the night of January 5th. Also, it says that a license plate reader clocked his car in the area on the same night. Reporting here in Washington, I'm Evan Kozloff, Spectrum News.
It is time now for a break. Coming up, I will be joined by Assemblyman Alex Borres to talk about his run for Congress to succeed Jerry Nadler. Stay with us.
In Focus with Cheryl Wills, a weekly show discussing decisions and potential solutions for issues making an impact in your community and your city. If it's important to New Yorkers, then it's being talked about here. In Focus with Cheryl Wills, Sunday mornings at 10:30 on New York One.
It's only a slice. It's only made possible by Spectrum, connecting businesses of all sizes, like small businesses, instantly serving up orders and inventory on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network. And factories, seamlessly connecting to farmers in the field with tailored solutions that always deliver. It's only a slice. It's only everything. Get your business free fiber-powered internet forever. Call to find out how.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
As far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to stand up for the little guy. I'm Alex Borres, and after becoming a dad 2 months ago, that's never been more literal. My son may be the reason I'm up at 3 a.m. now, but the state of our country was keeping me up before. Someday, this little guy is going to ask me, who is America?
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. We have been following the race for New York's 12th congressional district in Manhattan, the seat currently held by Jerry Nadler, who is retiring. And that video you just saw features one of the many candidates in the race, State Assembly member Alex Borres, who is my next guest. He currently represents the east side of Manhattan in the Assembly, including parts of the Upper East Side, Midtown East, and Murray Hill. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is an exceedingly crowded race. I think at the current count is something like 9 candidates, which is expected to grow. So talk a little bit about your pitch to voters. How do you distinguish yourself in this very crowded field?
Yeah, you heard the start of it in that video, right? I have a now 3.5-month son at home. I'm a new dad, and I refuse to let my son and the kids all over America grow up in a broken country. I'm running to defeat Trump and Trumpism, to reform the systems that allowed for him to rise, including how tech has been reshaping power, and to deliver a government that is actually working for results for the working families of New York.
I should mention that video, the campaign kickoff video, was shot mostly on a baby monitor.
Entirely on a baby monitor,
Which I assume is a first in politics. So points for originality, but no AI used in the video. I should mention,
correct,
you have developed a reputation as a leading voice on AI regulation, which we'll get into a little bit, but are you sort of leaning into that, or are you afraid of being sort of pigeonholed as the AI guy?
It's one of many issues we're going to be talking about. I'm talking about affordability. I'm talking about the threats that we're seeing to Social Security, to Medicare. I'm talking about housing, and of course, I'm talking about AI. It's one of many, many topics that New Yorkers need real results on.
And I have heard you talk about your background in the tech industry, right? And with a degree in computer science, which is not something we often see in politics.
I am the first Democrat elected in New York State at any level with a degree in computer science. And I only have to say Democrat because my colleague Ed Ra in the Assembly beat me to it by a few years.
Okay.
But I'd be the first that New York ever sends to Congress with that background.
So let's talk about AI. You know, like I said, you have been a leader on a lot of AI legislation, but maybe most prominently, the RAISE Act for Responsible AI Safety and Education. This passed the state legislature earlier this year. I mean, I don't want to give you too much credit, but it seems to me this is one of the most important pieces of legislation in the country because there is no AI regulation on the federal level, and it's been left to states like New York and California and some others, right?
And as this technology has been moving so quickly and we're seeing the federal government take no action, states have been stepping up. So yes, the RAISE Act is the first in the country that would put safety standards on AI as it's developed. We're seeing it affect more and more of our daily lives, whether it's the chatbots that are threatening our kids, or the effect on the workforce, or the effect on our energy bills and our climate. We need someone to just be putting reasonable regulations, right? We can be pro-AI and pro-innovation and still say government has a role in protecting citizens.
Well, we know that it's important legislation because it has made you some very powerful enemies, right? I mean, there's this $100 million super PAC funded by some of the leaders of the AI industry. And we learned this week, I think, that they are spending $10 million to stop you from winning this congressional seat. I mean, what was your reaction when you heard about this?
Well, they're telling people that I am their greatest threat for their quest for unbridled control over the American worker and our workforce and our education system, and they're right about that. I mean, every candidate in this race is going to tell you they're going to fight Trump, but I'm the only one that Trump's fighting against. He designed an executive order specifically to target the RAISE Act, and so far that hasn't passed. So his mega donors are spending $10 million to defeat me. So if you're looking at a bunch of candidates saying, oh, we're going to fight Trump, we're going to fight Trump, look at the one who actually scares Trump's mega donors.
And I should mention, you have raised quite a bit of money yourself. I think I saw $1.2 million in the first day of running, which I believe outpaces any of the other candidates in this race. How did you manage to raise $1.2 million? Where's that coming from?
Honestly, it was humbling and more than I was expecting going into it. It turns out that there was broad support here in New York and throughout the country for reasonable regulations on technology. And so I thought I had a number that was going to beat the field. I didn't think I'd get that high, but I've been blown away by the support of people just wanting a champion in Congress that can really get something done here.
Let me ask you about a little bit of negative press that you got recently. There's an article in the New York Times this week about a fundraiser that you held, not for yourself, but for Governor Kathy Hochul, that I think raised a few $100,000. I mean, I guess it was raising the concern, at least the perception, that this is sort of a pay-to-play situation because you're raising money for the governor. At the same time, you want her to sign your bill into law. This is still before, this is still on her desk. What's your answer to that?
Well, I've always been a team player and have supported the governor and my colleagues. And it turns out that there are a lot of people that want reasonable regulations. I think the governor has been the most forward-looking of any governor in the country on AI, of finding ways to innovate with Empire AI and to protect from chatbots. So it's not like I gave the money. I just said, hey, this is a great governor doing work, and people wanted to contribute. But I do find it ironic that the AI companies are planting stories against a bunch of individuals giving money to the governor, and meanwhile you have the president of OpenAI, Greg Brockman, giving $2.5 million of his own money to tear down the White House, East Wing of the White House, and build a ballroom. That feels like corruption, where they are looking for pay to play. Individuals giving whatever the limit is, which is maybe 1% of what Greg gave, is a totally different ballgame.
So I mentioned that the bill, the RAISE Act, was passed earlier this year. It's on Governor Hochul's desk. I assume you're having conversations with the executive chamber. What has she said about the bill and whether this is going to get signed?
Her and her team are listening to a lot of feedback. They're hearing from a split tech industry. There are a lot of startups and venture capital groups in New York that have written in support, but there's near unanimity in support among unions, among advocacy groups, among the parents who are seeing what AI is doing to their kids. We did a poll back over the summer that found that 84% of New Yorkers support the RAISE Act, so I expect we'll have good news soon.
You worked before you got into politics, which is not too long ago, for Palantir, the tech company which has developed something of a negative reputation. And talk about part of the reason you decided to leave Palantir, because they've been doing a lot of work with ICE on the federal level.
And that's why I left. I was there for 4.5 years. The vast majority of my work was the federal civilian side. I helped the Department of Justice go after the opioid epidemic, go after people who were committing fraud against Medicare and Medicaid to prescribe opioids and get them out into the community. We helped the Veterans Affairs better staff their hospitals so that veterans could get the care that they deserve and need. I worked with CDC to better track epidemics. But in 2018, 2019, when Palantir renewed a contract with ICE after the Trump administration had started changing the software and putting it to use to deport people, when Palantir renewed that contract without putting in guardrails that I knew they could, I decided to leave.
Let me ask you a couple of more political questions in our last couple of minutes. It seems like the perceived frontrunner in this race is Michael Lasher, the state assemblyman, who people see as sort of an heir apparent to Jerry Nadler. Is he the man to beat in this race, do you think?
I think the man to beat is the one that Trump mega donors have said they're willing to spend $10 million again because they scare them so much. So I think it's been clear who the man to beat is.
And, if you were to be elected to Congress, would you support Hakeem Jeffries as the Speaker of the House?
I would. We need to be focused on a government that is delivering for people, not these internecine fights. In my 3 years in the legislature, I've passed 27 bills, which is the same amount Congress as a whole passed in 2023. It's why I was rated the most effective new legislator, and I would take that effort and work to get as much done as possible for the people in New York to Congress.
All right, well, it is going to be an interesting race. Alex Boras, State Assemblyman, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, it's time now for a break. Coming up in 2 minutes, we will talk about Mayor-elect Mamdani's transition to City Hall and much more when I'm joined by two top journalists in our Friday Reporters Roundtable. Stay with us.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer.
I'm so honored to be a meteorologist here at New York One because as a Brooklyn kid, this is the station that I grew up watching. Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our weather on the ones. Watch the New York One weather experts on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything. Movies, series, sports, reality, news.
Here's a look at today's top stories.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
And even more of your favorites with live TV. Stream across your devices and enjoy anywhere.
See you later.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Two milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
And you know, if people are going to gamble, they're going to go to New Jersey. Why not do it in New York?
We really did have a hard choice to decide whether should it be 2, should it be 3, should it be 1.
The council votes to override the mayor's vetoes.
This council has remained steadfast in protecting New Yorkers and putting their interests first.
I got a lot of work to do, a lot of things I want to do on these 20-something days, and he can make the determination on what projects he wants to continue.
I've obviously made my critiques clear. I also think that there are good things that this administration has done.
I won't criticize him on every issue, but when a policy harms New Yorkers, I have to speak up.
The mayor is free to issue as many executive orders as he'd like with the less than 30 days that he has in office.
I stand before you being able to run for Congress because of what the United States did for my family.
When I become the mayor of this city, I'm going to continue to stand on picket lines.
Zohran and I are dedicated to is creating a nation and an economy which works for all of us, not just the 1%.
Yes, I'll come to New York. Well, you know, if he changes his mind and says that we have the right to exist.
I've spoken briefly with the president since then, and I've always kept it a conversation that's focused on the welfare of New Yorkers and the fact that New Yorkers are still struggling under a cost of living crisis.
The word affordability is a con job by the Democrats.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. That was a look back at some of the week's top political stories, including the back and forth between Mayor Adams and Mayor-elect Mamdani. And joining me now to discuss these stories and more are two top journalists in our Friday Reporters Roundtable. Jake Offenhart is a reporter at the Associated Press and also does some writing for The New Yorker. And Deborah Lee Santos is an editor at Manhattan Times and the Bronx Free Press. Thank you both for joining us tonight. So, you know, Mamdani continues to be hounded by this issue of, you know, his views on Israel and this perceived anti-Semitism. I mean, this week, we had Jessica Tisch, his police commissioner, who had to apologize to Mamdani because her brother had said that he was an enemy of the Jewish people. And then you had Mayor Adams issuing these executive orders that a lot of people interpreted as a rebuke of Mamdani's views on Israel. So, Jake, I mean, this is an issue that's not really going away for Mamdani.
It's not. And we could probably talk about this every week for the next 4 to 8 years, I'm sure. You know, it turns out Jess Tisch's brother was one of 2 business leaders who called him the enemy of Jewish people in the last 2 weeks. The New York Post had a story about a different one. There's like no evidence to me that this is really affecting average New Yorkers. And, you know, we could describe it as this controversy that's hounding him, but we're seeing it in business and political circles on the street. You know, the polls show that New Yorkers are increasingly sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. More than half of them, according to a recent poll, said that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are not the same thing. So until there's some sort of blowback to Mamdani's actual constituents here, I think it's kind of noise almost.
Yeah.
I would imagine, though, that because it's been such a central voting bloc, the Jewish community, right? But this is just also a political conversation as well. If you're trying to sort of game out, as you note, the next 4 years, you're thinking, okay, well, what are the issues that matter? And suddenly that seems to be splintered. I mean, there is no one voting bloc, right, ever in New York, but particularly in New York City. But there's the sense that this election has brought the fissures generationally, culturally, within the Jewish community to the fore. And that Mamdani is something of a foil in that conversation. So the idea that he's being hounded by it, I think he also sort of welcomes it. I mean, he's clearly comfortable in the spaces that he's carved out for himself as an activist, as a legislator, as a proud Muslim man. And I think he welcomes the conversation to a certain degree. Now, what that looks like when he's, when he takes his oath on January 1st going forward might be somewhat different. But he's got in Jessica Tisch, a police commissioner, someone who's clearly tied to the larger Jewish community, many of whom do not agree with Mamdani's stances, but also someone who's going to have to make some difficult choices around those, including what policing around religious centers and places of worship like synagogues look like, what that will actually entail, what Netanyahu's visit will look like should it happen. These are conversations that they're certainly going to have behind closed doors, but are going to play out in public. And to have her at the center of both public safety and then the centrist Jewish conversation, I think for him is just an eminently strategic move.
Jake, let me ask you about a piece you did, I think in this week's New Yorker, about Mamdani's dad, Mahmoud Mamdani, who is, in his own right, a well-known scholar. Yeah. He's at Columbia University, or because he's on leave from Columbia. You spent some time with him. What did we learn from Mahmoud Mamdani?
He is a very sharp political theorist, considered one of the world's leading public intellectuals. And in some ways, I think he brings that experience to his analysis of his son. He talks about, how Zohran is new to this and he's still figuring out how to build political alliances, but he's definitely proud of some things and they've had disagreements on other things. And he was more open with me than I expected. He showed me around their apartment, Zohran's
childhood bedroom, right?
I saw the bedroom. I don't know if I was supposed to go in the bedroom, but of course I went.
You realize you're a topic of discussion in that family.
yeah. Well, they were very generous with me.
Yeah.
And this book that he wrote, which coincidentally came out 2 weeks before the election, deals with a lot of the same themes that we've seen run through this campaign, and even now with ahead of the Trump meeting, there was this reading where his dad is talking about his own proximity to power and how to deal with dictators and how you talk to them, but you don't compromise on certain things. And there was a reading in Morningside Heights where Zohran was there and his dad kind of looked over as if he was like sending some wisdom his way.
And they talk about politics and about Mamdani's Mamdani's career. He said his son doesn't really take a lot of his advice.
No, they're like any father and son. They have political disagreements. Unlike most, his father is a very renowned Marxist political theorist of decolonialization, so it's a little different. But yeah, they have.
Yeah, and his son gets to say, "And I just won this election, Dad."
Right.
It's like so. There's a little counter there, right?
Yeah, of course.
All right, guys, we got to take a quick break. I will have a lot more with these reporters in just 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 on Spectrum News New York 1. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill. And with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. I'm once again joined by my reporters Roundtable, Jake Offenhartz of the Associated Press, and Beverly Santos of the Manhattan Times and the Bronx Free Press. So let's talk about the mayoral transition. You know, it strikes me that typically in this country, transitions are typically, you know, pretty civil. I mean, with President Trump maybe being one exception, but, you know, even Obama had Trump to the White House. We saw Dinkins and Giuliani having a press conference the day after that election, which was a very contentious campaign. We're not seeing that with Eric Adams and Zohran Mamdani. I mean, Adams seems to be kind of begrudgingly giving over power.
I would argue that he's also choosing to be distant from his seat of power, right? He's choosing to be far from
literally distant.
Right, and racking up the frequent flyer miles in a way that suggests, I think that it's almost, the dissonance is almost, it's laughable, and palpably so, that he's so invested in these specific actions as regards very specific constituencies and wanting to protect them and project this air of authority just before he's on his way out, and largely being absent in some very specific ways. He is going to forever be this mayor. He will have his place in history. I would have imagined he might have been a little bit more thoughtful about the exit strategy. As he has known and has come to learn in some specifically palpable ways, running the city is difficult. He could have really, and I hope he still does, he could have really leaned into the opportunities to avail himself and make his team readily, just more even publicly available to the Mamdani team.
I can't think of another, and correct me if I'm wrong, a mayor who's been so publicly job hunting while still on the job. Like he's padding his resume, and he's like, I keep thinking back to 2 weeks ago, the meeting with Trump and Mamdani in the White House. Everyone in New York, my deli guy is watching this meeting on his phone, and Adams is in Uzbekistan. Right. It's like 1 a.m. in Tashkent, and he's posting photos with the regional governor in a basement somewhere.
Yeah. And lots of photo opportunities in a similar vein.
Bizarre.
Right, that lead to nothing for, as you pointed out, your deli guy or you and me. It doesn't, the dissonance is striking. And I'm not even sure, it's almost, I dare say it's spiteful. There's a sense that it's just like, throwing his hands up and going, I will ride this out the way I want to.
It's a little sour grapes, too.
Sure.
I think he doesn't, the idea that next guy has all this attention, because he was the hot thing at one point. He was the future of the Democratic Party.
Well, and seemingly, he's sabotaging him on some fronts, right? I mean, I'm thinking specifically, well, he added money to the budget in order to hire more police officers, which is something that Mamdani didn't want to do. There was executive orders I was mentioning. And then it remains to be seen if he might stack the Rent Guidelines Board in order to block a rent freeze, right? Which is, a pretty blatant use of his power to try to thwart Mamdani.
That would be very brazen, because it could potentially really mess with Mamdani's central campaign promise, which he was elected on.
But also would give him a bye, right? I mean, if you can't make that happen, it's not my fault. And that might be a little bit of a cushion as well for people whose expectations are exceeding the general realities of governance. So that might also, I mean, it might not be what we want, but it might also give him just a little bit of cover as he navigates some serious thickets.
I wonder if Adams has the stones to really disregard the popular will in that way. You know, we've seen, like, on the other hand, we've seen these executive orders.
It's stones. I mean, it's also, like you said, it just seems sour grapes. I mean,
no, he might.
Right, he might very well.
Unpredictable guy.
I mean, again, but fundamentally, let's imagine the very best here, and imagine that a transition of power doesn't have to just be civil, but can actually be useful. There are so many well-meaning, and deeply committed public servants who are still on the job as we speak, who we can only imagine, with and without leadership, are doing the right thing by the transition.
Let me ask you guys about the Mamdani-Trump relationship. Mamdani said this week on this show that he had a phone call with Trump late last week. And of course, they had this love fest in the Oval Office just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it is fascinating to me. It seems like Mamdani is really, the tack he is taking with Trump is sort of to like butter him up, right? I mean, he's not really pushing back that, that hard on ICE raids or anything else. I mean, right now, he seems to be taking the approach that, Trump, if he talks about stuff like building housing, and he said that he had offered his condolences about the National Guard troops that had been shot, that Trump is going to sort of leave us alone here in New York City.
Which, Adams people would say,
good luck with that.
Well, he tried that, and you guys all got mad at him about it. But I think Mamdani is doing it in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
So far, there hasn't been a ton of blowback from the left that I've seen. I think people understand, like, he seems to have the president wrapped around his finger.
Yeah, and there's also got to be a little bit of grace. I think he and his team are being a little bit more strategic in realizing you can't have two mayors at once. Unfortunately, there are still ICE raids happening as we sit here, and then there's a conversation around families being separated, but there's very little he can do about it, and it doesn't really pay off to be particularly vocal and voluble about it right now. So he's got, again, got a little bit of cover and just enough time to figure things out. Not all of them, but it might not be the worst position to just, you can't be the mayor when you're not.
Right. With the ICE raids, though, I mean, we saw what happened last weekend where you had protesters basically blocking ICE from carrying out a raid. And, the more we see those kinds of flare-ups, it's going to be hard for Mamdani to maintain this kind of relationship with Trump, because inevitably it's going to spark some backlash from the White House, I would think.
It seems inevitable, certainly.
Right, and he just was at the Starbucks picket line saying, look, I plan on being as much an activist as I do a mayor. So there will be some clamoring for him to be standing in front of some vehicle on Canal Street. I mean, whether he follows that through line or not, but I suspect there'll be many who'll say, and there may be a strategic decision at some point to say, you know what, we can't really get him to change the ICE raids. By that I mean Trump, but at least getting him down there on Canal Street or the next raid that we know about, maybe that's the best way. And again, Jessica Tisch seemed to have been on the last a couple of the last conversations. So strategically, it's not the worst thing for him to kind of pop up.
The real question is, does Trump see that and get angry, or does he say, this guy, he's doing performance, he's doing theater, I respect it.
Yeah. It depends on the day of the week.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the day of the week.
Game recognizes game, as they've often said. All right, Jake Offenhartz and Deborah Lee Santos, thank you guys both for joining us tonight. And that is going to do it for tonight's show. Stay tuned for another episode of our weekly national political show, The Big Deal with Errol Lewis, at 9 o'clock. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great weekend. We will see you the next time on Inside City Hall.
That's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You've done with the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything.
Love you, brother. Be careful.
Movies.
I've got this condition where I don't feel pain.
You're a superhero.
No. Series.
There was another murder in the building.
Sports. Reality.
Here's to a summer you'll never forget.
News.
Here's a look at today's top story.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
Even more of your favorites with live TV.
Welcome into First Take.
Stream across your devices and watch anywhere. At home or out and about. It's the entertainment experience you've been waiting for. Streaming apps included at no extra cost.
Just got that, pal. Get a good look.
With live TV and on demand. All together, all in one place for you to enjoy.
It's whatever kind of adventure we want it to be.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.